Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and, something that we could see a mile away, Bill Gross of Janus, just said bonds, like men, I don't know where he's going there, are in a bear market. And a lot of reports are coming out about like serious problems within the bond markets. And of course, China has been seen recently slowing or halting purchases of US Treasuries. And there's much more to this story, but first I'm going to go to John. John, what do you say? What's going on here?
Well, first of all, one of the only buyers of treasuries today is the United States Federal Reserve. So they're buying their own debt. First of all, so that's a huge trouble sign that the central bank is buying back its own debt that it created with the help of the U.S. government through deficit spending. That's a huge problem now. Of course, Bill Gross said that there was, the end of the 25-year bull market that has been in bonds. Max Kaiser, I want to bring up Max Kaiser because he's been talking about this end of I think it's 400-year bull market that's been in bonds, which is ridiculous. And what we're seeing is just a natural cycle of debt when you overaccumulate mass amounts of debt, as any empire do over time. And when it gets concentrated in certain markets, you get a collapse in that debt, and then that market goes down. It could be the stock market with margin debt. It could be housing market with equity line of credits and all that kind of stuff. So it just depends on where it is. Auto loans. Well, now we have them in multiple places because of central bank manipulation of markets, bringing everybody into mass amounts of debt, credit card. Everything is peaking at the same time. The government, corporate, every debt around the world is just at a massive peak, and it's going to come down.
Well, it's all very convenient for them as well because, of course, if they shove you down a bottomless pit of debt, you're forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, which puts you in perfect servitude exactly where they want you. And Ye Z, according to Bloomberg, said, if anything, one could make an argument that a reduction of China's holdings could at times drive down yields instead of pushing them up, as shown in this chart. When the People's Bank of China sold treasuries in its foreign reserves in early 2016 to offset capital outflows, it may have helped spur demand for safe havens from investors who were concerned about a China crash. As China's economy started to recover in the second half of 2016, it resumed the purchase and the yields went up slightly. And looking at this chart, John, obviously there's a lot of action going on. There's been a lot of people concerned about, this massive power shift to China and the Asian continent, and a lot of shift away from, the West, away from the United States, Canada, and of course Britain and the others.
Yeah, well, we did a video, I think far back. I don't remember if I think we talked about it, but I don't know if we did a specific video on it. But we were exposing how Belgium suddenly accumulated mass amounts of debt from nowhere in U.S. Treasuries. So it was a way of the U.S. Fed said they'd stopped the quantitative easing, the bond buyback program. Meanwhile, suddenly out of nowhere, the Belgian government decided to buy 300 billions or something, I think it was, in U.S. Treasuries, which is a mass amount of U.S. Treasuries for a small country like Belgium. Also, what's happening around the world is you got to remember we have the end of an empire where the U.S. World Reserve currency has come to an end. It's been too expanding and it's been losing its value so rapidly that nobody wants to hold it, right?
Rome is burning and Nero's playing his fiddle. We got the bread and circuses.
Yeah. Well, the currency is the most important of any empire, and that is how they expand. When that currency is getting to a point where it doesn't have value, where all these debt has accumulated and it's just a mass loss of it, nobody wants to hold it anymore. That's why China is talking about it. Made several videos about this before, and Japan, we were talking about, how Japan and China both have over $1 trillion in U.S. holdings, and how that could trigger a fight if the U.S. is allied with Japan or with China. It doesn't matter. One of them could dump it and crash the U.S. dollar completely just in an instant. So the U.S. dollar has mass accumulated all these debt all over the world. And meanwhile, China, of course, is preparing themselves for this demise, and they're hoping that they can take over and become as it says in this Nikkei Asian Review, China sees New World Order with oil benchmark backed by gold. So they're looking at actually trading the yuan for oil, that's a massive hit on the US dollar, which is the reason why the US dollar came to be was Kissinger, went down to Saudi Arabia and made the petrodollar, as everything now is for commodities.
And then leading into the Trilateral Commission, of course, to continue that push towards a monetary partnership.
Yeah, and that's why we see all these central banks around the world currently, right? It was all spurred from that meeting with Kissinger, and of course now they're everywhere. China is, of course, looking at creating this exchange where you can actually directly trade like oil for gold in this exchange, but you can also get yuan, of course. But this is important. This is another nail, of course, in the coffin, as Mike Maloney, my great mentor, I would say, has been saying before. He's been talking about all these nails in the US dollar coffin over time, how people have been moving out. And we done several videos. We did a particular video on, showing all the different swaps between countries, how they're going outside of the US dollar system. Yeah,
that was a lot of fun to edit. But I mean, it all comes down to all fiat currencies eventually revert to their intrinsic value of zero. They always have, they always will, going back to 1024 AD. Interestingly enough, in China, and this perfectly illustrates the power shift that we're seeing. And there is a power shift, and it's been a long time in the making. And of course, going into that kind of communistic style control complex is really good for the establishment as well. And the US world reserve currency is being swapped out of like crazy. Then, of course, the interest rates. I mean, that's another thing that we've gotten into a lot, is that they're just trying to push those interest rates up enough to drop them out, because between, I believe, 2008 and 2012, they dropped 5.5%, somewhere around there. And, of course, they didn't go into negative, but they incrementally...
Well, listen, so... There's something out there. If you actually look at real inflation versus the low interest on the debt, for example, if you actually take the inflation rate, the real inflation in my point of view, which is way higher, we are actually in negative yielding territory on that debt that people have invested in, because it's costing them more, because the value of that debt holding that they have is getting less and less valuable because of this high inflation rate.
And with the next coming crash, which is inevitable, of course, fundamentals are off the table due to the level of manipulation in the monetary system. So you can't put a date on when it's going to happen, but you know it's going to happen. And anyway, when that drop comes in interest rates, we're going far, far, far into negative territory.
That's what they want. And implement a cashless society.
Which is exactly what happened after Sweden went into negative interest rate territory. Interesting how that works.
Yeah, they're working really hard to eliminate. And if you go look this up on Trading Economics, M0 in Sweden, and you'll see how it's plummeted like crazy. So they're working really hard to get their cashless society. And of course, they are also working a lot with forcing people to put in RFIDs in their bodies. They've been doing a lot of propaganda. They've been doing a lot of propaganda on that on Swedish TV. I've seen that. So this is all coming down to another way of, like, they're trying to position themselves now, because we're seeing the death of the US dollar. People have been talking about for so long, Josh, but it's happening now. Like, it's right in front of us. It could happen at any moment now, because there's so many people moving out of the US dollars. So who knows when that final snowflake on that hill above the Federal Reserve will trigger that massive avalanche of fiat money just coming down the hill and eviscerating the whole Fed building.
Well, and I just wanted to mention quickly, because this leads us to the solutions to these issues, and this is why we're seeing such, give or take a few corrections, we're seeing a huge flood into the crypto markets. We're seeing a huge flood into gold and silver, palladium, all these other alternatives to get off that centralized grid. Of course, gold and silver is heavily manipulated at the time, but when the banking system goes down, that beach ball bounces up. And the thing is, people are flooding those markets for a reason. They don't just flood it because, hey, let's try and make a few quick bucks. Of course, there's a part of that in there. But even though I don't understand why people are investing in gold and silver rather than insuring their wealth with gold and silver. But
they don't understand the fundamentals of it.
Yeah, exactly. So But there's a reason why all these people are flooding into these markets. They're flooding into these markets because people know that something's about to happen. Even bankers are flooding into those markets because they know what's about to happen. They might speak out against going into Bitcoin. They might speak out against going into these cryptocurrencies, despite on the side actually getting into them themselves. But just don't listen to bankers. Listen to your own conscience. Look into things. Do your own due diligence, because when it comes down to it, it comes down to self-sustainability, financial responsibility, the hallmark of freedom itself, and then food, water, shelter, self-defense. So you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. Gold, silver, Bitcoin, etc. Tangible assets, decentralized assets. Of course, this is my opinion, not meant as financial advice. Do not take it as financial advice. Do your own due diligence. But that's the way I see it. So I really think that this is a big sign of the coming collapse. And I think it's a good sign that maybe people should start looking towards preparing a little bit instead of, just leaving themselves wide open. It's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared.
Well, what's going to happen is all these people that are investing in their pensions, they're going to be eviscerated. That's one of the biggest concerns here. People that worked really hard all their life, they followed the system, they did what they got told to, and now they're going to get screwed over by both the government and the banks that told them to get into this. And so it's terrible. And then on the other side, we've been working really hard on trying to educate people here at MAM. And I think more and more people are getting it. But what you need to do is you need to go and educate yourself. Don't even trust me and Josh of what we're saying here. Go and do your own due diligence, because you as an individual should be responsible for what you do with your money and with your life. And you shouldn't take any advice, really. You should take the opinion and then go and make up your own opinion and do all the research. It's so important.
Yeah, and it's really important for you to be able to take that responsibility over your life, because that's the exact opposite of what the establishment wants, whether it be the government or banking system. They don't want you to be independent. They want you to be dependent on them, because that makes a good little slave on the animal farm.
Every time a fiat currency fails, people that were self-sufficient, they won. They won big time, other than the people that were, dependent and living in massive cities on the government and didn't have any preparedness for what happened. Yeah. So it's so important to be self-sufficient and actually do it. Not just listen to us and then just sit there and say, oh, that's a great idea. Start doing it, because even though people getting sick of us talking about this, Josh, things are gonna happen at one point. So it's better to be over prepared and prepare way ahead of time than sitting there at the time and then getting hit.
Absolutely, and that kind of goes down to our motto, which we will finish this video off with. Thanks for going into this with us, John. This is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized and censored by YouTube as the Anti-Defamation League comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. You can also find me at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post via Steem, the cryptocurrency. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments below, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And don't forget to come on down to Anarchapulco in Acapulco, Mexico in February, one of the best events of the year, and you can save money on your tickets by typing in promo code WAM. That's WAM. We'll leave the link below for you, and until next time, don't forget to subscribe. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.